about 9/11, I do want to ask you one other thing about, you worked on America, A Tribute to Heroes.
Yes,
For that.
yes, I was very honored that they called me. It was a long list of people who contributed, but I wrote two, basically they were monologues. One that Denzel was supposed to do and ended up not doing. I think Will Smith did it, and I forgot who did the other one. And one of them I wrote about was not about somebody I knew who died, but actually a firefighter who had lived and was down at the pit working, had been there on September 11th, and then was down there working. And so, because I wanted to write not just about death, but I wanted to write about the spirit of New York and the spirit of America that was going to rebuild and going to work on. So, and what was ironic is the show got nominated for an Emmy. And it was one of those things like, I mean, I wrote this in like 20 minutes, and I was like, so I get nominated for an Emmy for writing something, and there were like 9,000 writers' names attached to it. It was like long, and it was everybody on the planet. And somebody said to me, "You going to go out for the Emmys?" And I was like, no, I'm not going to go out there for the Emmys. And as it turned out, we lost to, I think, Jon Stewart, the writers on Jon Stewart. So it was like, I was like, okay, that's the only Emmy I'm glad I lost, because I just felt like it was nomination because of sentimentality as opposed to necessarily the quality of the work. You know, I'm not saying that the work was, people's work wasn't good. It just felt like it was, you had to vote for, you know, you had to nominate it. You had to. It's, you know, so.
What are your career projects?
Well, I'm just Philanthropist just premiered on NBC last Wednesday, and we made 8 episodes, which we shot in Prague and South Africa and Mozambique, and it's a show about a billionaire who has a tragedy in his life and decides that he doesn't want to give up the private jet or anything. He just wants to fill this hole in his soul. So he starts to do things for other people, and part of what he learns is that you know, being generous is the most selfish thing a person can do, because part of the reason you do it is to feel good about yourself. And also, what he learns is that the money only gets you so far. You know, he's used to being a guy who goes, "Hey, get me that," and gives somebody $50 and they get it for him. But when you're in the middle of Africa or Kosovo or Kashmir, the money becomes less of real currency, and what becomes the currency is then your wit and your guts and your chutzpah, and that's what he starts to go, okay, now I've got to, if I'm really going to help these people, then I've got to use the best of myself, not just my cash.
How is it working with a broadcast network as opposed to an HBO?
Well, it was very tough going back to NBC. Initially, they were very excited about the project and the way I wanted to do it, and then they weren't, and they fired me. And in one of these irony of ironies, then the people who fired me got fired, and Angela Bromstead, who came in to replace the people who got fired, called me and said, "You have to come back. You have to come back and do the show. It's not working the way that the other people wanted it." They had, you know, really changed it significantly. And she said, "Please come back." And I said, "Well, I'm not coming back if I can't do the show I wanted to do originally." And she said, "Absolutely, you can do the show." So for a guy who's been writing unhappy endings for most of his career, this one turned out to be a happy ending in the sense that I got to do the show that I originally conceived. The reviews have been pretty good, though, you know, I'm always suspect of that. And the numbers were, we won the time slot for our first week, which I have to admit, I don't think I've ever won a time slot. So it's a little disconcerting to win the time slot and the key demographics and all that nonsense that they listen to. But it was thrilling shooting all over the world, and I would love to get another opportunity to do it, because ultimately it's a show about how you don't have to be a billionaire to help the person next door to you. You just have to want to, and you can find a way to do it, which I obviously truly believe. So.
And it was inspired by an actual person?
Yes, there's a guy named Bobby Sager who was a ruthless businessman, bought and sold companies, broken them to pieces, sold them. And he has, for the last, 10 years maybe, dedicated himself to going to the worst troubled spots on the planet and helping. But his way of helping is not the kind of limp-wristed liberalism that I am used to doing. He's a capitalist, and his idea is, he said to me once, you can teach a man to fish, but all he eats is fish. If you teach a man to fish, package the fish, market the fish, ship the fish, he can actually get some meat and some potatoes and a little dessert as well. And I just think that's such an extraordinarily brilliant way to look at philanthropy, in that people will stop killing people if they feel that they have taken care of their families, that it really is about just taking care of each other as opposed to having to kill each other. So
it's a lot more action and adventure in it than most of your other work as well. Has that been different for you?
Yeah, it's been fun, and we haven't put anything in just to put it in. I think it's all motivated by character and by the story. We used to joke on Homicide that an action sequence on Homicide was the car would pull over to the curb and park. That was the big action scene. Whoa, look, we shot a car pulling over and parking. How great are we, With this, there's a lot more stunts, and James Purefoy, who's the lead, has hurt himself a couple of times because he's an actor who likes to do his own stunts, which show you how nuts he is.
Do you have any other projects in the fires?
I have a bunch of things. I'm developing a series for the French and the Germans about the Borgias, who were the Renaissance Spanish popes, and a demented bunch were they. So I'm doing a lot of research about the Rome in the 15th century right now. I'm doing supervising Brad Winters, who's one of the writers I work with on a project for HBO called Americatown, which is basically set a little bit in the future, not too sci-fi, and everything that we worry about has happened. What bad that could happen economically to this country has happened, and there's now a colony in Argentina, like Chinatown or Little Italy, where Americans are going to live to work. So it's basically taking the immigration story and flipping it so that the Americans are the immigrants, and having to deal with that. What else? I got a whole bunch of stuff. I'm busy.
No, what about Epic Poem? Is that coming back yet?
Epic Poem. I'm gonna get to that. It'll be at some point when you least expect it, you'll go, oh my God, he finally wrote an epic tome, and it stings.
You're also very involved in the Writers Guild.
I am. I used to be more involved in the union side of it, but now they made me president of the Writers Guild East Foundation, and we have, just in the last couple of years, really started to reinvigorate and expand the activities of the foundation. We've done 2 writing workshops for veterans, one in Columbus, Ohio, and one in San Antonio. The one in San Antonio we just did, and was with disabled veterans. And the old cliche is true: you get more out of it than you give. Mind-altering, life-changing experiences working with these men and women who have done so much for us, and we also have a literacy program where we're going out all over the country, encouraging kids to read, taking like a famous movie star that they would think is famous, not that I would think is famous. That's my front door.
What do you think in your career has been your proudest achievement?
The next thing I do? I honestly, I don't know. Yeah, I don't think I've hit it yet.
Any career regrets?
I don't know. You know, I've been so lucky and so blessed. It would be hard for me to carp about something. I mean, even the stuff that happened with Strip Search or getting fired from Philanthropist, you know, you go, okay, well, it's showbiz. I don't know. I mean, things that I've done, I'm sure that there were times when I should have been more listening to people, you know, but sometimes when you've got all the noise of being a producer or showrunner on top of being the writer, I mean, being a writer, you live in your head so much anyway, and you've created all this stuff that you get to control, and then you get to be a producer and there's all this noise around you. Sometimes I don't listen as well but that's like a general thing. I can't say there's like a, you know, oh, I wish on March 14th, 1969 I hadn't taken that LSD or something. So.
What about, I'll talk a little bit about that, because so much of what you've done is, you know, has sort of a darkness to it, and yet you're very upbeat.
Well, I like to think that I get the demons out on the page, so it leaves me. It's very ironic in our business. The comedy writers are the most tortured people I know, and the drama writers are all kind of like, hey, well, what are you going to do? Life goes on. See you next Tuesday. So I don't know. I think if my stuff is dark, it's because I worry that so much of television is a lie. So much of it is Prozac that just gives the public exactly what they want and doesn't ask them for anything more, doesn't ask them to think or feel any more than the cheapest emotion. And so and there's a place for all of it. I mean, thank God we live in a universe where there's so many venues that you can do anything. You know, there's room for everybody. But I still think I have a responsibility to say, you know, things don't always turn out the way they do on television. They don't always turn out that way, and it's a lie. And I think it's not helping people or serving people to perpetuate the lies. I think it's you know, I have an obligation, at least I feel, to shine a light on a dark corner as opposed to put a smiley face on everything. So.
Why do you think it's been perpetuated?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if there's just something fundamentally in people that when they get home after a hard day at work, they really just want to escape. And I'm all for escape too. I love a great movie where things are blowing up and, you know, all that machine guns are firing. I love that kind of stuff. But that shouldn't be the whole story. That shouldn't be the whole story. So I think people do want to relax and put reality behind them. But there's bastards like me who constantly want to remind them that there's...
What advice would you give to the next generation of writers and producers in television?
Well, number one, I would say, tell the truth. Whether it's comedy or drama, tell the truth. And whatever your truth is, tell it. Tell it as boldly and as loudly as you can get away with. And I would also, what I'm excited about, I think, in the future, or the present actually, is that because people can shoot stuff with their cameras, you know, their cell phones, and they can edit them on the computers, and people can create things the way that I had to wait for people to give me permission. I could sit and write by myself, but I couldn't shoot it myself. And I think that that's very exciting that this, no one needs permission to create and film something. All you need is the will to do it. And that's, I'm anticipating a whole explosion of creativity from the next generation of writers and directors and actors, because I think the potential is there. What it would bother me if they just make horror movies, you know what I mean? If they take this opportunity for freedom and expression that they have available to them and just make bad versions of things they've already seen. That would be the tragedy of it.
And the last question that we ask our interviewees is, how would you like to be remembered?
You know, I don't actually care if I'm remembered in the sense of, I don't, it's not like I want a building named after me or something, or some, you know, when the history of television is written, I'm one of the 100 names or any of that. I think that, I think each generation has a responsibility to define itself and then leave that, you know, as a generation and as a culture. And so I would wish our whole time on this planet will be better remembered than it actually is, because we've made a lot of mistakes. So I don't know if that's even, I don't know. I don't think, you know, I'm not a very Bible-y person, but there's a quote in the Bible that says, we are not called to be successful, we are called to be faithful. And I've always taken that to heart, in the sense of, I'm very happy with the success I've had. I really am. I like the trophies, I like the money. I'm honest about that. But I guess, to ultimately answer your question, I would like to be remembered as somebody who was faithful, not necessarily to God or any particular belief, but faithful to the truth. That's how I'd like it.
Oh, that's beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Tom, for sharing your story with us.